Max Olson, normally Thursdays, but as you know, we're going to be shut down Thursday through Monday for what we're doing within the studio to kind of tweak some things, but also give everyone a chance to get away during the holiday weekend. So Max, nice enough to join us today. Max, thank you very much. Your thoughts, the ACC, it's not revenue sharing, I guess, when it comes to the main television money, but at least they worked out incentives on how successful you are. Your thoughts, they made this happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, it definitely was interesting how those conversations really in just a matter of a day or two last week at ACC meetings went from there's these 7 who think they've got options and might contest the grant of rights, which could still happen down the road here, but to kind of placate the ones that were uncomfortable with that kind of agreement, I think it's very interesting. It's certainly I feel like it's a good compromise if it'll settle down some of that discontent. But obviously, as we know, like the real problem here is not really how you slice the pie. It is that you need a bigger pie.
Mm. Yeah, Max, I'm curious as to where the schools that are most concerned with the gap between them and the SEC and the Big Ten, so to speak, what kind of Ponzi scheme they come up with to get that $30 million over the next decade. Because that's, like you said, the bigger pie, because they don't really have a way into it now.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying that the ACC needs to like we all know these college programs have enough money to operate, right? So to say like, well, you need to get to SEC and Big Ten money, like not necessarily, right? But certainly, I think that if you are a leader at one of those schools like Florida State, and you're looking at the landscape, you're saying, well, how much will it cost us to get out of this league, and how much is that cost going to be offset by us making so much more money in a different, in the SEC or something like that? And so, I'm sure that's part of on a school-to-school basis, that's part of the calculation there. But certainly, I think there's a long ways to go here on the ACC stuff. I certainly don't think they're breaking up anytime soon. But if you're the SEC, the Big Ten, even the Big 12, you're looking at that situation and you're very curious. Would anything get set in motion there that would start to split that up?
Max, you had a piece on Matt Campbell, and man, year number 8 for him at Iowa State. That's pretty crazy to think that it's been that long already. But then again, I guess not. Just what did you gather from talking to him? I feel like it's such a weird school to talk about sometimes, and I think Baylor's have experienced this as well. Is like as soon as you start having success, people are already like, all right, when's the coach leaving? And refuse to believe that coach might be happy. And then, there's struggles, and that brings other questions. And so I think he's kind of found himself going from, big time, maybe future big program head coach to kind of what's going on with him in Ames right now. What did you gather from talking with the Cyclones?
Yeah, it was great to get to visit them in Ames a few months ago and really kind of sit down Campbell and talk about how he sees the landscape, not just of where Iowa State's at, but where he's at. Because, he's a guy that, like, I really do think goes about this job with a lot of integrity and, like, really does have, really strong beliefs about how this should be still centered around the players and culture and things like that. And he doesn't want to, He doesn't want to do this with the portal and NIL and things like that. And obviously the way that these jobs are judged and kind of who they're going to has changed so much now that it was interesting to talk with him about, okay, can Iowa State sustain success in this kind of new world here where you certainly don't have as much money as anybody else, but obviously at the same time, there's better upside right now with, Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12 and more parity in that league. And certainly a 12-team playoff, I think if you told Iowa State fans 5 years ago that was coming, they'd be pretty stoked because you feel like your best teams have a chance to break through and play in one of those. Certainly they would have in 2020. So, I think he's a guy that is really happy where he's at and has turned down a lot of jobs over the years. But then, usually this is why guys move on before you get to year 8 is because you are going to have some stumbles. You're going to have a great team like they did in 21 that didn't get it done. And then you're going to rebuild after that. And it's hard to just, turn a bunch of young guys into NFL players right away, stuff like that. And so they're kind of going through the bumpy rebuild here, had to make some staff changes and fix some things there. They've just lost so many close teams over the last 2 years that it's kind of a glass half full situation there where, man, they were pretty close to being really competitive. And They're going to be young again this year, but they feel like they're building towards another run.
Max, back to the ACC with the unequal revenue sharing based on success in the postseason. The SEC has their alphas. Every conference has alphas, and every conference also has those that are very fortunate they were a part of the conference pretty early. Do you ever see even those conferences getting some sort of an unequal revenue sharing in the postseason?
I mean, I don't I certainly understand the success-based approach to this, but in terms of locking in, well, hey, these bigger brands are worth more, so pay them more. That kind of a model. I just don't think. I mean, certainly we've seen the Big 12 defer to Texas and its big brands in the past, and we saw how that ultimately went. I don't really think you, as a conference, that's a very successful long-term approach to kind of bend to the needs of the people who are threatening to leave, right? I mean, we've seen that play out. We kind of know how that history goes. So, you certainly get it because everybody wants to feel like they're making as much as they possibly can, but I don't know. The more uneven that stuff gets, the more I think this just becomes more chaotic because you've got everybody just kind of building up these resentments.
Max Olson, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports.
Max, now that we're to Memorial Day weekend, essentially, and, the spring portal's been closed for a month, and you've got some guys sitting around waiting, do you expect, I would not call it a big flurry because it's not as many guys as would be in the first window, but a small flurry of the Zachary Franklins of the world and people like that to start committing here over the next couple of days? Because most of the time it's the first week in June where they've got to be on their next campus working out and getting ready for the season.
Yeah, if you look at our best available rankings on the Athletic, I think 18 out of 20 of those guys are committed at this point. I mean, these guys are all kind of pretty much figuring out where to go now. Zachary Franklin is still available, and that one's a real mystery in terms of where he's going.
Yeah.
That's been a very quiet recruitment, and you would have thought when he goes in that may have gone pretty quickly. You would have known right away where he's headed, but that one's been really quiet and odd. And then Xavier Henderson, the receiver from Florida, is the other one in our top 20 who still hasn't submitted, but I think the crystal balls have all been on Cincinnati for him. So, yeah, I mean, we're kind of getting to that point where it's time to make decisions now. These players are coming off their official visits and stuff like that. And just going through it, the out of the 2,300 scholarship FBS players who've entered the portal in this cycle, I think we're under 700 now that haven't committed. So, I'm sure some of those guys are going FCS or junior college or something like that. But, yeah, this should all be settling down here in terms of people picking schools. And I really don't think we're going to see a lot of grad transfers go in over the next few months here.
Max, I don't think that we talked to you since this has happened, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll ask this for Paul's sake. What'd you think of Keon Coleman going to Paul's beloved Florida State?
Great one. Yeah, it's a great get. That was a head-to-head with Ole Miss, I believe, on that one. I think Keon Coleman is a very talented wideout coming off a great year at Michigan State, who I think looked at his situation and I from everything I've heard, maybe he looked at it and just felt like he needed a little bit better quarterback play than he got from Peyton Thorne at Michigan State, and felt like in terms of boosting his draft stock, he's got to go somewhere else to put up bigger numbers. Obviously, you saw Jaden Reed become a second-round pick, despite not putting up great numbers last year, but still, I think he's looking at it and kind of trying to maximize how do I make money now and make more money in the future. And so, yeah, Florida State, that's a big get for them and for where they're at offensively. Had to replace a couple of receivers that left for the portal and the NFL and stuff like that. So I think he slides right into that starting lineup for them as a guy that, I really love what they've done in the portal this offseason. Certainly one of those teams that they've built it that way. But when you're setting up for a big year here, have really picked up some premium pieces to fill out that lineup.
They better be good, Max. They just, it better
Paul,
be.
Paul's been talking big noise over here.
I don't know if I can go through being excited for the first time in 5 years and then not be able to. I don't know if I can take it. I might wind up in a facility.
Well, it's funny, the guy he's going to line up across is Johnny Wilson, who was a guy that, wasn't as big of a name in the portal last year coming out of Arizona State. But, man, they did just a great evaluation on that on a really big wideout, one of the biggest in the country. And he had a monster year. So, I think one thing we've seen from Florida State that they're just ahead of the game on a lot of people is they're getting really good players out of the portal, and they're really not missing very much. So, this was a big swing. And I think when these kids look at, these guys that have gone to Florida State and gone off to the draft and stuff like that, I think they feel pretty good that like Florida State's going to help move, boost your draft stock and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of a no excuses year this year, isn't it, Paul?
Yes, very much so.
They've all in on the poker table. They've done a hell of a job with Norvell. A question for you again, Max Olson with Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, and David Smoak.
Max, Dave Aranda announcing Blake Shapen as the winner of the spring quarterback competition, beating out Sawyer Robertson. I don't think that came probably to many as much of a surprise, but your thoughts on Blake Shapen getting back in the saddle?
Yeah, I think that you kind of wondered, would that one play out right at the deadline there too, right? I mean, I think that obviously Robertson coming in as a transfer, like he's not going to leave, but that Baylor was in that situation a year ago and chose Shapen over Bohannon, and so I think that I'm intrigued to see what him taking another step in his development looks like, and it's a pretty interesting year for the Big 12 where you've got some pretty good guys back, but then you've got a bunch of new transfers in the mix here too. Like I do think that can Blake Shapen be like a top 5 quarterback in the Big 12 this season? Like I don't think that's impossible. Certainly, I think you got to get better in terms of what you're doing around him. Didn't really see the playmakers there last year, but I like what they have in the run game and certainly up front. And like I think that if he can be efficient, I think they should be better.
Max, we appreciate it. Enjoy a long weekend. I hope you get one. You get a chance to get away, or you got some other major story you're about to pop on theathletic.com.
There's always another one, right? We're always chasing another one. But no, hopefully we can relax a little bit.
All right. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time. Max Olson, theathletic.com. Normally Thursdays, today, Wednesday.